Hello everyone, this is Saurabh Sharma. Welcome to Vijeta IAS Academy. Let's start with the current affairs of 24th of January. Today we have this very important topic about Taliban. The topic named is Oslo Talks. As you can see on the screen, the Oslo is in the Norway, right? Yes. Oslo Talks. The article given in the Hindu. Just let's read the context first and then I'll take you to the background of the entire story. The first Taliban delegation to visit Europe, since in Europe it is Norway. Since returning to power in Afghanistan, began talks in Oslo with Afghan civil society members focused on human rights ahead of highly anticipated meetings with Western officials. That means Afghanistan overtook the country again in 2021 in the month of August. On 15th of August, President Ashraf Ghani fled the country and he fled to XYZ places. The country actually came under a great chaos, a great ruckus, great disturbance in the law and order, violence, and a great amount of suspicion, and people were very scared that what will happen if the Taliban is again going to take over the country. This is okay. This is our current affairs that yes, Oslo talks. Taliban is first time after coming into so-called power, flying to Europe, and they want to discuss some issues with the Western countries and whatever is given in this analysis. But before that, we are reading this topic in 2022. We have to understand that what has happened, how did Taliban take birth, how did the issue of Taliban in Afghanistan has been prominent since 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2000 to 2010, and then again in 2022. How come this situation is again coming back? What are the reasons that Taliban had to take birth, and what were the developments during that time, and why people of Afghanistan, civil society, human rights violations, especially women, why they are so much scared with the presence of Taliban. So this is what we'll be talking about. So let me just show you the picture of some handsome gentlemen. You can see on the screen that these people are getting ready with all their good coats on, the white probably gutty detergent they might have used, and there's a plane in the background, and boarding this plane they will be going for the first time to Europe to discuss something with the Western countries. And what is the development? Let's know about this. The thing is, friends, this Taliban is actually a byproduct of transformation in the power during the 1970s. This was a product of great resistance to the some sorts of developments introduced in the country. It was a hunger of capturing power within the entire region of Afghanistan. There was a great invisible hand of many countries like Pakistan, China, Iran, United States, and such a beautiful country lying within the southern part of this Hindu Kush mountains there in Afghanistan. The beautiful country actually destroyed by the people, by the multiple stakeholders who were not having any work there in the country, but they destroyed it. So this entire story begins in the year 1978 when the Saur Revolution, SAUR Revolution, SAUR Revolution, the SAUR Revolution in 1978 installed a communist government in Afghanistan. So what is this SAUR government or SAUR revolution? Let's take a look on this. This Saur revolution is also known as April Revolution, right? What happened? It was the process by which People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, that is PDPA, overthrew General Muhammad Daud Khan in the month of April 1978. And this Muhammad Daud Khan was a military dictator who actually established one party system in the country, right? And he himself took the power through a military coup back in 1973. So after 5 years of his establishment in the Afghanistan, he was just ruling the country under the military rule, and he was the General Muhammad Daud Khan, and he came in 1973, and after 5 years in 1978 he was actually, Daud Khan and his cousins and his families were killed at presidential palace by military officers. Whose military officers? Which party they were belonging to? People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, Democratic. So that means in 1978 some sort of democracy we were about to see in Afghanistan in 1978, and it was by PDPA, right? So they were about to introduce this democracy, or the change in the regime, the Afghanistan, how it was being ruled. Now, this Saur revolution actually installed a communist party in power there. Where? In Afghanistan, in the month of April in 1978. That was known as the Saur revolution. Now, this government actually, because it was a military rule till 1978, now this government, which established in 1978, tried to introduce many reforms in the country for modernization. For example, introduction of education, more rights for women, and some sort of changes in the economic regime, social regime, cultural regime of the country. Those were the changes that were introduced in the country by this communist party in the power. But during that time, the people of Afghanistan, certain groups, actually thought that they were too radical changes in the country during that time. The rural areas and the traditional power structures present in Afghanistan, they were not very happy, and with this new scheme of things, and this led to anti-government protest in many places. So just understand it easily. 1973, General Muhammad Daud Khan established himself through a military coup. Till 1978, he ran a military government there. In 1978, there is this Saur revolution, or known as April Revolution, where People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, they overthrew him, they killed him in the presidential palace, and they set up one communist government. This communist government introduced many reforms in the country, in the sector of education, social, cultural, and with the international connections or relations during that time. But many traditional power structures or people did not like those changes, and they thought that they were too radical to be introduced. Hence, there were divisions within the government in many places in the region of Afghanistan. That was the story, that was the context. Now, when there were the differences within the government, then the situation, law and order, and many political glitches started coming up that opened the space for Soviet Union to take an entry in the Afghanistan scene. So hence the USSR intervened in Afghanistan, wanting to place a communist ally in government there. That was the thing. So in 1979 December, the Soviet army was deployed in Kabul. Soviet army. So just understand, one country which is weaker politically, with so many differences available present during that time, that opened the arena for another country that came in, and they wanted to establish their own thinking ideology or regime, because it was communist during that time, the Soviet Union, and hence they tried to place a communist ally government there. So in 1979, the Soviet army was deployed in Kabul, and they orchestrated a coup, killing the ruling president, and his name was Hafizullah Amin. So when in 1979 this President Hafizullah Amin, he was killed by the Soviet army as they organized this military coup in the Afghanistan. That was the situation till 1979. Now what happens is the Soviets installed their ally named Babrak Karmal as the president of Afghanistan. Babrak Karmal, he was the new president installed. Babrak, Babrak Kamral. In Afghanistan, he was a communist ally of Soviet Union, so that the entry of Soviet Union would be easy for the Afghanistan. That is the again situation. So you see that how the fundamental structure of the existence of Afghanistan started weakening since 1973 itself, right? Then the United States and other Western countries during that time saw this as Soviet invasion, because remember that was the peak of Cold War era between the world's two major powers, United States and Russia. So any movement taken by or any step taken by Russian government or Soviet Union government during that time, it was counted as an invasion, and it was seen as an invasion by United States of America and another ally of, for example, NATO members. Then a bitter war was fought between Soviet troops and the insurgent groups called Mujahideen in Afghanistan, because there were many people, they were wanting these foreign powers to be out. Therefore they formed a group named Mujahideen, and it was considered as insurgents during that time, because Soviet Union or Soviet troops had massive support for the Babrak Karmal, because it was an ally of Russia. So any insurgent group or any activity that was giving resistance to the Babrak Karmal government, it was seen as an insurgency, and that insurgents were named as Mujahideen during that time. Hope the development is clear so far. Now, while the cities and towns were under the control of Soviet troops, whereas the rural parts were under the control of Mujahideen. Right? The Mujahideen were persistent in their fight against the United States of Soviet Russia, the USSR, and were also supported by the United States of America. So now, when the cities are under control of Soviet troops, the rural areas are under control of these so-called insurgents, Mujahideen. These Mujahideens, when they were fighting with Soviet troops, these Mujahids were have ultimate support from countries like China, United States, Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, etc. And that's how they were given training, arms, ammunition, and money to fight Soviet troops to push them back in their limits, or in the territory, or back in the Central Asia region. The citizens of Afghanistan were only category that actually suffered in this bloodshed or in this game of power. Actually, now we call Afghanistan as the big game region in the Asia, or generally it is considered as the heart of Asia, because the problem lies here, and here ultimately the channel of disruptions could be spread to anywhere in the Asian region. Now, the citizens of Afghanistan suffered massively in this war, and many civilians lost their lives, jobs were gone, economy was absolutely reduced to zero, and all the scopes and all the prosperity in the country were brought to zero, right? The Soviets withdrew their presence finally in 1989 from Afghanistan after 9 long years war, and at cost of somewhere about 20 lakh civilian deaths. 20 lakh, and they actually fought for 9 years. So the first era was that this 9 years presence of Soviet Union, and after that the presence of, for 15 odd years, the presence of United States of America will be followed up. Now, the government of Afghanistan had to fight the Mujahideen alone. Why? Because the Soviet troops actually went back, and now these people who were already against the Babrak Karmal government in during the 1979, so these Mujahideen were fighting with the government massively. and these insurgents took control of Kabul in 1992 finally. Because 1989, Russia, Soviet troops moved back. It was the time that when Soviet Union or USSR started disintegrated in the year 1989, 90, 91, 92. That was the year consistently actually Soviet Union was getting disintegrated, and that's how Soviet troops were not getting a strong command to remain there, or they were not getting clear orders from the, and they were not also getting the political and financial backup, so they had to ultimately move back. And now, as long as they started moving back with the same pace, Mujahideen started taking control of the regions, and finally they took control of the capital, Kabul, in 1992. There was a bloody civil war as Mujahideen themselves were divided into various factions for all vying for powers, because they saw that one president who was getting this backing from Russia, they all moved back. Now this government led by Babra Kamal was also weakened. So many people tried to capture Afghanistan because they were thinking that they already had support of some massive financials like United States of America, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. So they thought that that was the high time to capture and control the power in the heart of Asia, what we call today. Now, in 1994, a group of students seized control of the city of Kandahar and started a battle for power to control the entire country. What happens is, now, to fight these mujahideens, because also the neighborhoods or the neighbor countries during that time, they also saw that as an arena to actually take their shares within the region of Afghanistan. So what happens is, group of students from the Pashtun speaking or Pashto speaking region from the northern, northeastern and the southern Afghanistan, they came to Peshawar in the territory of Pakistan, and there they got trained in various mosques, military camps, and they were also trained or given military training, Islamic fundamentalist or radical education training, radical Islamist training, fundamentalist training, military training, financial backs by the ISI of Pakistan and the clerics, and they were made so capable that defense and economic, what front actually they could get back to the Afghanistan, they were all made stronger and they were given strong arms and ammunitions. So these students who were actually belonging to Afghanistan only, they were coming from the Pashto speaking region, they came here as students in Pakistan and they were given military training, fundamentalist training. Their brains were washed and they were given so strong retaliatory training that they went back to Afghanistan to fight back these mujahideens, and these people were called as Talibs. These the meaning of Taliban is basically students in Pashto. So that is why they came as students, they became or as Talibs in the region, and they were actually going back with the strong arms and ammunition, hence they were becoming the Talibanis there. And this religious fundamentalist training they got here, it was so disastrous, it was so strong that actually paved the way for the entire duration of violation of fundamental rights, human rights of the country, especially when you don't have human rights. Fundamental rights has no question there because it is the subset of human rights. Now, so you understand who's Taliban? Talibans were the students who were coming from the Pashto speaking regions of Afghanistan. They came to Pakistan as students, and Taliban means in Pashto language as students. So here they were given military training and Islamic fundamentalist training. Their brains were washed, they were given arms and ammunition, and they were sent back to the territory of Afghanistan to fight back these mujahideens, and they were called as Islamic fundamentalist Talibanis, right? In fact, many of them were trained in Pakistan in the military camps where they came as refugees or students, mainly students. Now, in 1995, the Taliban captured the province of Herat and Kabul during that time. Herat and Kabul, two most influential provinces of Afghanistan. Financially stable and politically controlled, that means Kabul and Herat. In 1998, almost the entire country was under the control of Taliban because they were getting the consistent supply of money, arms, ammunitions, and the motivation, because they were all told that you have to take the control of Afghanistan, because they were all given studies in Pakistan. So Pakistan thought that this is a snake Pakistan is rearing in its backyard, and Pakistan, while doing that, forgot that, and also that snake was actually being reared for India. But Pakistan forgot that during some course of time, after 1 or 2 decades, this snake who is being reared in the backyard of Pakistan will ultimately bite back to Pakistan in the form of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan at the moment presently. So we'll be talking about that later. Now, so by 1998, the entire region of Afghanistan was controlled by the Talibanis, who were given the backing of this Pakistan and other countries, financially, militarily, and whatsoever they were needing. Now, this Mujahideen and Talibans were in forefront, and that's how the condition basically started getting worse in the Afghanistan. And ultimately, who suffered? The law and order, the total situation, normal life, social life, cultural ties, and every single thing got stuffed. And here the people of Afghanistan paid a huge amount. Now, so if that was basically the spread of Taliban in Afghanistan, now what was the rule like in Afghanistan under Talibani regime? Now, since they were given the Islamic fundamentalist education there, so it was a literal, so what is fundamentalist Islamic education? What we mean that it is basically the literal interpretation of Shariat law. It is basically the literal interpretation of Quran. Literal means whatever it is written, you don't have to take the meanings out of it, which could be liberal. No, it is literal. And here they wanted that it is basically the men who rule the world, and females, women, and whatsoever, they were actually brought so demeaningly, so subordinate to the position of men, that their lives were made hell and very, very compromised. And that's how this violation of human rights started coming in. They were not having any kind of belief in the modern education system. They never let any female to go out without a man accompanying them or whatsoever, and they did not allow any such thing which could actually give the liberty and some kind of reforms and rational thinking scopes to the people of Afghanistan. For example, banning the modern education system, scientific education system. They banned the media, the music, the film, so that they stopped any kind of communication or connection with the outer world, so that people do not get any idea of development, and they take that rule of dominance as the ideal one, and hence people do not get any kind of retaliation back to the Talibans. The power has two simple rules. If you want to maintain your power or upkeep your power, the first thumb rule says that do not let your power go. That was basically very well handled by Taliban, because they were having strong backup of money and arms and ammunition. Second thumb rule is, while maintaining your power, that means do not let your power go, you should also stop the others to have that power. That means apni jaane mat do, dusre ke paas aane mat do. Do not let your powers go, and do not let others attain the power. So the others, how would they attain the power? It's not about the muscle strength. It is about the brain. It is about the rational thinking. So if you have stopped and cut all the connections, be it music, media, or any kind of flow of information from the outer world, then definitely you are restricting all the scopes that people might raise voice against your rule. So let's take a look in a nutshell that what happens is, when they came to power, the people of Afghanistan generally welcomed the Taliban initially. This is because they seem to offer stability in a country wrecked by long and bloody civil war since 1978 to 1998. Now, for this 20 long years, when more than 20 lakh people have lost their lives, the country's infrastructure got demolished, economy doomed. So they believe that these Taliban, because they actually belong to Afghanistan, Pashto speaking region, so they were their people only. So initially they were believed in their way, but gradually they started showing their true colors. The Taliban promise was to restore peace and prosperity in Afghanistan and enforce Sharia in the country. Afghanistan were Afghans were tired of the fighting between the Soviets and Mujahideen we have seen, and welcomed the Taliban rule as a new form of energy, and who were successful initially in weeding out corruption and removing lawlessness. Because you have to establish yourself, so you have to make all the resources where you can actually earn the taxes, earn money from, so you have to make them work, and you have to show to the people that everything is working fine, so that people can ensure their trust in you, your position, so that you can establish your government there. Now, the Taliban introduced their interpretation of Islamic law, which was actually literal, which meant that several rights were suspended for people, especially women and children. This is what we have explained. They endorsed Sharia mixed with Pashtun tribal code. And in tribal codes, basically, it's simple. It's simple society. The punishments are very harsh. And here, the male members of the society take the control and command of overall functions of the people interrelationships. Women were required to wear burqas, niqabs, covering their whole bodies, including faces. Men had to grow beards. That means it's like tribal codes and mixing with the Sharia. So it is basically a disaster is meeting with the draconianness. So what will happen? You can actually imagine. Women could not go out of the house without any male accompanying them, and he has to be a family member. They could not work outside. So females' participation was actually stopped, and females had only one thing: reproduction, reproduction, and reproduction. That's all. Women, the Talibanis discouraged girls from going to school because the liberalization has to stop. The scientific knowledge, scientific flow of information has to be stopped, so that people do not believe and do not think of modernity, and nobody challenges their role, their rule, and their scope. Who's Talibans? Now, public executions were held. The simple rule is that give them that degree of scared or that degree of fear that they do not raise your voice, and that fear will not let them unite and make a collective voice against you. So therefore, the public executions were held for those accused of murder and adultery. Amputations were also done for those accused of stealing. This is basically the literal interpretation of Shariat law, and the absolute brutal form of punishments, which we actually called as the punitive form of punishment. Punitive form means that you have done the sin, or you have actually committed a sin, or you have done the wrong, then definitely you will be given punishment. But there is one also, there is another form of punishment system, which is actually known as reformatory. What India believes in, that we believe that people who have committed sins, we believe that they were actually misunderstood, misled, or they did not get the real gist of the life. So we should give them, after giving them some punishment, we should give them a chance so that they can come back to get mixed with the society and mainstream. This is called as the reformatory system. And what Talibanis were doing, the harsh punishments, public execution, stone pelting, death, and eye for an eye. So this was actually called as the punitive form of punishments, where the reform scope is very less. The ultimate idea is to pass on the fear and fear. That's all. Now, they banned television, source of information, media, source of information, music, source of enlightenment. Sometimes you can see that, because you actually get energy, you get mixed ideas, and you actually get the motivation to work harder. Music else gives you that. So this is basically a kind of thing that you get people numb. You kill all their scopes and possibilities of thinking and thinking in different directions, or probably what world is doing, and so that they can compare their petty situation or circumstances with the world during that time, and they can actually, they should not get back to the rules or against the Talibani system. This is what they were actually stopping. Now, kite flying, cinema, photography, painting, dancing, or mass gatherings, and everything, they were actually stopped. Women were barred from attending sports events or playing even. So women actually were made like a palanquin, where only they were for certain works. Other than that, no place and no value. People, especially women, faced public floggings for any perceived wrongs. The Taliban is also accused of carrying out massacres against civilians, especially ethnic or religious minority groups. Thousands were killed, women raped, and people were still unaccounted for. Pa- Talibani rule was so stringent and so irrational in nature that they say that if there's an incident of rape happened, it is not a mistake of man. It would definitely be a mistake of a woman actually. Because of that, he got excited to do the rape or to commit the rape on the female. So if you can see that what sort of thinking they were carrying, this is ultimately passing on the, and any female living in that environment will never have the courage to go outside alone. She will not have the motivation, hence she will actually get restricted itself, and she will believe that this is the life that belongs to her. So simply, needless to say, they did not believe in democracy because it was the tribal rule. So no democracy. Now, the Taliban was much criticized for blowing up the 1500-year-old Buddha statues of Bamiyan because they were idols. And Sharia says that, see, the idol worship is haram in Islam. This is what Sharia implementation that says that. So, and they saw this Buddha statue as the source of or symbol of danger that might bring to the Islamic rule. So hence they destroyed it. Absolutely. So that was the situation actually Taliban created since its or taking over its power. Right now, Taliban, what happened and what sort of situation during the international relations they got? Only some countries actually recognized Taliban during their rule. The name, if we name them, some of them were United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and some form of this support was coming from China, because Pakistan was having the direct backing and China was having the invisible hand during their time. They are believed to have been receiving funds from Pakistan, and Pakistan could not provide funds because it was the invisible supply of fundings from United States, China, and countries like this, and so that was the money was flowing into Afghanistan for the upkeeping of the Taliban. Now, but during that time, the United States got attacked in 9/11 2001. There, this attack of United States, the Taliban drew focus from all over the globe, and that dragged the attention of the world that Taliban is doing something notorious in the region of Afghanistan. That, and it is such a massive blow to the World Trade Center, that the world dragged its attention towards the Taliban, and the United States got firmly committed to to demolish all the power structure of Taliban in Afghanistan, or Mujahideens or whatsoever, Al Qaeda, all the terrorist group. They were the operating from the land of Afghanistan. They were to be ruled out. They were to be rooted out. It was the firm oath of United States of America. Now, it was accused of sheltering Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda, who were blamed for the attacks of 9/11. This Taliban, that's how they got the attention. Now, the US intervened in Afghanistan in 2001 to deny Al Qaeda a safe haven and a base to operate in the in the country. Now you can relate the thing that how, why did I say that Pakistan reared a snake in its backyard, thinking that it will only bite its neighbors who are not having the good conditions with the good relationships with the Pakistan. And the invisible funding was also coming from the United States of America. But now what they did, they gave shelter to Al Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden. Now, Pakistan officially broke off diplomatic ties with the Talibanis after 9/11, because now they felt that something wrong has happened, and United States and Pakistan would never try to take the resistance from United States, because Pakistan is also getting the funding for the internal domestic policies from United States of America. Now, many top leaders of the Taliban are said to have escaped to Quetta in Pakistan, and Pakistan actually gave shelter to these Talibanis, because Taliban was a greatly created asset for Pakistan. They could use any time, because these people did not have any value for human life, did not have any value for peace, did not have any value for the stability. So it is like a bomb, human bomb, and Pakistan could use the human bomb against anyone. So that is why that was the situation. Now, Taliban were removed from power in October 2001 by a coalition of forces led by United States of America and several other countries, including NATO forces, in 2001. So starting from 95 to 96 till 2001, those 5-6 years of Talibani rule in Afghanistan were absolutely harmful, fearful, dangerous, and still unforgettable in the minds of the people of Afghanistan. But in 2001, led by a joint resistance led by United States and NATO forces, they uprooted the Talibani regime from the Afghanistan, and there was a shift of government, and it was a new interim government headed by Hamid Karzai was set up in December 2001 in Taliban. That was the development. Now, the Talibanis, after their defeat in Afghanistan in 2001, they reorganized themselves, and their leader Mullah Omar, after its defeat, was reorganized it, and he became the leader who launched an insurgency against the Afghan government. This Mullah Omar died in 2013 finally. Now, it wages war in the form of suicide attacks, ambushes, guerrilla raids, and turncoat killings against the coalition forces in Afghanistan. And that's how the situation remained in this way only, that there was a leadership in the form of Mullah Omar, who was controlling Talibani forces in the form of terrorist activities, insurgent groups, and they were consistently fighting the government of Hamid Karzai, because they believed that it is in anti of Talibani regime. Remember, the same situation was coming back because the Russian troops, they support the communist ally they placed in the 1978 in Afghanistan, and those Mujahideens were fighting against them, and now these people are fighting against the Hamid Karzai government. So during these long years, where massive budgets were flown in, 800 billion US dollars of United States had actually piped into the country of Afghanistan for the upkeeping, in the name of upkeeping, whereas the world knows that the only agenda behind those supplies of massive supply of men's military personnel, military equipments, and setting up bases and whatsoever, it was just to take revenge of World Trade Center attack, because the respect, the goodwill, the image of United States on the global stage was at stake. So during that period, one group again suffered. It was the civilians. Civilians hurt massively, badly, and during this period, the Afghanistan never took a peaceful breath. So here, in this manner, we can say that the Taliban is a country where almost everything was in a danger, in a mess, and the country was in a bad fate, that so many enemies were fighting for the power capturing in the country, and they actually ruled, and they actually demolished the country like anything. And here, this has given rise into the poverty, inflation, economic instability, law and order disturbances, and the open channel for all the powerful forces to come there to openly set up their bases. And ultimately, the people who might have born during that time, they have been growing up by seeing that it is just a bad fate, and this is their only life they had to lead. So it was absolutely a hopeless country. So during this time, the world has come up with the Heart of Afghanistan conferences, so that the peace in the region is very much important for the peace in the South Asian nations, especially India. India actually saw this as an opportunity, that when it is against Pakistan, it is against China, it is against Russia, and United States forces are there. So India thought that this could be a great arena where India can bring in investment, and they can develop good relations with the people of Afghanistan, so that India can reap its potential benefits at later stage. Because Afghanistan region, after we constructed this Chabahar port in Iran, so for us, the connection with the Central Asian region and the East European countries was easy and simple, and we were wanted to control this situation, and we wanted to ensure this connectivity through the region of Afghanistan. So this is what India thought of, and that is why India invested billions of dollars in the country of Afghanistan. Sorry, millions of dollars, might be billion, in the country of Afghanistan, in the form of creating local infrastructure, in the form of garland highways, in the form of establishment of hospitals, military bases, airstrips, and then giving the educational provisions, health provisions, supplying medicine, supplying food products, supplying so many things in the aid. And India successfully built their good relations with the Afghanistani or Afghanistan government and Afghani people. So we have also seen that the Afghanistan president has also visited India on many occasions. They extended their good support to India, and India's great relations with Afghanistan was important to keep Pakistan at bay or in a balanced situation. So India has never recognized the Taliban while they were there in the power till 2001. But after 2001, we recognized the government of Ashraf Ghani. But during this course of development, what happens in 2021, the world has seen that Afghanistan was again taken over by Talibani forces. Suddenly, in the month of August, and on 15th of August, Ashraf Ghani fled from the country. And when the president of the country has fled, then what is remaining there? There is no command structure, there is no commanding power authority, and the people, law and order situation, everything was left behind in the hands of Taliban. And people again reminded of the same brutality, same misleading, same lawlessness that actually took control in the year of 1995 to 2001. That is why we have seen that those hard-fearing videos where two young Afghans were actually hanging on the tires of the plane, they thinking that they will be going out of the country, and meanwhile they met with an accident. So you can imagine that what sort of situation and fear this Talibanis brought in. But this time, during this 2021, in the month of August, after that, they did not take the courses of such a strong hand over the people of Afghanistan. Rather, they tried to establish, and they wanted the world's recognition to them, so that world can recognize that Taliban is a new form of government, and they will be leading the country peacefully, democratically, human rights respect will be there in this manner. That's how they wanted to lead the country. But so far, till this date of this recording this video of 24th of January 2022, no country in the world has formally recognized the government of Taliban in such a manner that it can actually give a positive message to the world. But what about this Oslo talks? This Oslo talks is that before Talibanis took back control of Afghanistan in 2021, there was international aid being financed around 80% of Afghans' budget from the international fundings. And these countries of developed Western world was giving almost 80% of Afghani budget in the form of funding and aid that actually made this country, Afghanistan, run its projects, its social security schemes, its economic functionality, infrastructure development, and everything. But in August, the countries like United States and other budgetary institutions, they froze the funds. For example, $9.5 billion in assets in the Afghanistan Central Bank. That the provision is there, but the funding was actually frozen back. So, and in the absence of these issues, or in the absence of fundings, of course, the Afghanistan is suffering like anything in the form of high inflation, unemployment, poverty, lawlessness, human rights violation, and overall the fear among people that one day their fate will be bad and they will be killed. So during this situation, when the people are not happy with you, and if you are able to get back these frozen funds to the people of Afghanistan, then you are able to run the country smoothly, because these civil servants also, and they have not been paid for many months since August. So now this is to restore the faith of Afghan citizens in the Taliban form of government, that this time they are not coming with that bad intentions. This time they want to rule this country like a modern world should be led. So within this context, these people, these handsome gentlemen, all these people are going to Oslo, that is in Norway. And Norway has clearly said that these people who are coming to talk, or the Taliban government representatives who are coming to talk to the Western world, it is not a formal recognition for them on the world stage. They are just coming to speak, and we are finding this is an arena and an immediate opportunity, and a very important opportunity, so that the innocent people, innocent civilians of Afghanistan, they do not suffer in this political complex situation and very harsh reality what they are suffering from. So this is the context that why these people are trying to fly out in Oslo, and what is the their objective. So now if we take a look, that no country has yet recognized the Taliban government, and Norwegian foreign minister has stressed that talks would not represent a legitimization or recognition of Taliban. So this is basically the discussion between the Taliban government and Western powers, facilitated by Norway. So the focus is to resolve human rights, because human rights violation is there. We have seen that, and people are in the great fear. So it is the duty of the world, humanitarian duty, that this time world should stop Taliban from taking any humanitarian or against the human rights steps and actions within the territory of Afghanistan. The humanitarian situation has deteriorated drastically since August, when the Taliban stormed back to power 20 years after the power being toppled. The delegation will be pushed to promises to uphold human rights in return for access to billions of dollars in frozen humanitarian aids. We have seen that almost $9.5 billion in assets have been frozen by the United States of America in the Afghan Central Bank. Unemployment had skyrocketed and civil servants not paid. Hunger now threatens 23 million Afghans, or 55% of the population, according to the United Nations, which says it needs 4.4 billion from donor countries this year to address the humanitarian crisis. And India has also sent food supplies recently. Wheat we have sent, rice we have sent, other products we have sent in the form of medical aid, pharmaceutical products, because in the fear of this COVID-19 situation. And this is what Afghanistan, or this present interim so-called government of Taliban, has appreciated the efforts from India, that they will never forget what India is doing during this time. And this is a great support India can extend for the people of Afghanistan, not Taliban I'm saying, but for the people of Afghanistan, because India has been able to successfully made or built a great relationship with the Afghanistani people, and that legacy should not come to an end just because these Talibanis have come in. And we have the political differences with the Talibanis as the so-called government representatives, but the people should not suffer. And India, firm believer of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, that world is one, and world is one place, one home for everyone. So within this arena, India has to extend the support for the people of Afghanistan, because hunger is the great enemy of everyone around the world. And slowly and gradually the world can come together and they can speak to the representatives of Taliban, so that and world can actually collectively ask the present head, the current head of Taliban, that is Hibatullah Akhundzada, that this time the world is watching you, and if you do not respect the human rights, women dignity, and the basic rights of people in the form of hunger, in the form of starvation, in the form of sanitary conditions, in the form of shelter, education, and atrocities on women in the form of, so the world will never going to tolerate about these actions there in Taliban, and be it world should open a joint front against the Taliban if such things what happened 20 years back is repeated again this year. After 2013, Afghanistan started coming up in such a way that they had representations in sports, they had representations in Olympics, they had representations in many arenas, and it was doing great. But again, this regime of students named Talibs again coming back to Afghanistan, the world has now learned that how to deal with these people, and for this purpose only, these people flying to Oslo for talks, that shows that somewhere they are not that aligned to the violence, to the backstabbing, to create conspiracy or to make conspiracies against the world, like WTC in 2001 or 9/11 attacks. So this time world should consider this situation as an opportunity to give them a firm talk, a table to discuss and understand, and to watch them and try to, if this is the fate that Afghanistan is going to have in the form of Taliban, then they should be given the restrictions, rules and regulations to work upon, and first they have to prove in the form of the ground functionalities to make everything work in the favor of people. Then only world will recognize these people of Taliban, because Ashraf Ghani has actually set a bad example, that if the representative, the head of the government or the first citizen of the country has fled by leaving millions of poor people behind, then the world should not expect from a leader like Ashraf Ghani to come back and to take over the government again. So in this manner, the entire world has to work for the people of Afghanistan primarily, and then for the political moves in the country. So this is about, this long video is about the Taliban existence, how the Taliban came into prominence, and how the development has taken place within this regime. So hope you understand this entire issue in this one video. Thank you so much.